Hello, and you are very welcome to this week's episode of Cut Through the Noise with me, Aisling O'Rourke. Cut Through the Noise is the podcast that helps business leaders increase sales through elevated communications and marketing. If you're just tuning in, this is season 8 of the podcast, so please do make sure to go back to our back catalogue and check out all of the useful episodes that we have for you. Remember that Cut Through the Noise is a practical, target-focused podcast. We don't just talk theory, we give you actionable insights so that you can connect more deeply with your target market. And in this series, we're focusing in on internal communication. And today, we are talking about our bodies and how we take care of our team members within the corporate environment. Our bodies have a massive impact on our ability to be productive at work. And I'm really delighted to be joined by someone who believes that our bodies are an internal communication system and that we really need to be able to harness the power of our bodies to be more productive at work and to live more happy, fulfilled lives. I'm joined now by Andrea O'Grady of The Wellness Edge. Andrea O'Grady, you are so welcome to Cut Through the Noise. Andrea, thank you so much for joining us. You are mid-rebrand. You have a brand new brand. Talk to me about the Wellness Edge. What exactly is it?
Well, Aisling, thank you for having me, first of all. It's great to be here. The Wellness Edge is born out of, I suppose, all my work and life experiences to date. I wanted to bring together my physical therapy and Pilates and movement background along with my corporate wellbeing qualification and consultancy. And it's about recognizing that wellness isn't just about being well in yourself on your own. It's about everyone. So that is about work and it's about community. And it's actually a social responsibility. Mm-hmm. And that's the service that I'm going to be offering now going forward.
I'm just listening to you describe it there. And it's so important that wellness is brought into the workplace. But I think, and I was saying this to another guest for this particular season of the podcast, there is sometimes a feeling that in corporate efforts around wellness or other initiatives, it can feel tokenistic. Like I'm aware of one place of work where there's a wellbeing initiative and it's around going for a walk on a route and there's nothing else being done, you know, and it's like, here's a map, go off for a walk and you'll be grand. And, you know, that can rub people up the wrong way and get them offside before you've even started. So talk to me about why you feel bringing wellness in and incorporating wellness into our working day is just so important for us.
I mean, yeah, it's seen as a box ticking exercise, really. It's do we have to have it? Do we need it? Or actually, if you did have it, it's about performance. How well will everybody perform? And like one-off things is the box ticking piece. Bowl of fruit, bit of yoga, bit of Pilates. And you're looking at a culture change. That's what you're really looking at. And that's why it's so hard. Because if you have leadership or managers that aren't on board with wellness, it's not going to work. The communications have to go two ways. And effectively as leaders, we're role models. And as managers, we're role models. And then people will follow. It's like it's social norm to sort of row in with people. And, you know, the 5 people that you hang around with are the people you become. So if everybody's sitting at work 8-10 hours a day and not moving or not encouraged to move, or it's frowned upon to disconnect, it's not going to happen.
What about then managers who say, I'm so under pressure. I get what you're saying, but I just don't have the capacity for this right now. I'm burnt out myself. Never mind taking on board the wellness and well-being of my employees or team members.
It's something that I hear all the time, and people are under pressure. But the question I would ask then is why? Why are you under pressure? Is it because of the workload? Is it because of the structure in work? Is it because you're lacking team members? What's going on? Or is time not being managed properly? Are there meetings about meetings about meetings? There's a lot of policies and structures and systems in place in the workplace that don't match up with the company values, in fact, to
Mm.
look after their people and to enhance the human experience at work. And that is box ticking in itself. So are they really walking the walk? It takes courage to actually really look at your business and say, is it performing? Is it the bottom line being affected by team morale, by our culture? And to shine a light on the areas that need some work. And very often it's at leadership level, and is a hustle culture? Is it, that right to disconnect? Is going home at 4 or 5 o'clock seen as a half day? It's sort of joking, but the underlying message is it's actually not okay to do that. So there's a change of language needed. There's a team approach needed. And also the employees and the workforce need to be involved in the decision making of what they would like to have.
I'm laughing as you mentioned the 4 p.m. being a half day. I never forget. And I was in my 20s at the time and I was working stupid hours. And because I wasn't saying no, and that's, I had to take responsibility for that as well. Like, okay, yes, the workload is being given to me, but actually I wasn't saying, no, this is a 2 people job, not a 1 person job. And I should have said that. But I'll never forget, as I left one day after a particularly long day, the head of the company was coming down the stairs as I was walking out the door. And on a half day, I see, and I just saw red and I let rip. Normally, I'm very calm. I'll ask somebody for a private word. Could we have a chat for a moment, But it was that point of where I'd been working X amount of days in a row. I wasn't being paid what I should have been paid at the time. So things were very tight. And it hit a nerve. And I
Mm-hmm.
do think that sometimes people can be tone deaf and they can see these initiatives as box ticking exercises. They can make a joke about it. And sure, I worked hard. And we've seen it in lots of professions. Like I remember hearing now years ago now, but like when junior doctors were protesting around having to work 12, 14, 15-hour shifts, 24-hour days on call, whatever it might be. And more senior people in the profession at the time saying, well, sure, I had to do it. You know, just because we've all done it doesn't make it right. And if we've suffered the consequences of it, it's on us to try and at least acknowledge that it's wrong. And if we can't make an impact in improving it.
Absolutely. And people that choose to ignore it are bleeding talent and innovation in their teams.
Yeah.
And they're people, that's where presenteeism shows up. And people are like, well, I just do the bare minimum then. I won't be creative or innovative. And actually, when the next crisis hits, I'm actually not going to put in any extra effort. So if people don't feel valued and part of their wellness comes into that as being part of being employed in a company, they're not going to show up as their best. And they're not going to try.
Mm-hmm.
It's different between wanting to and trying to, and it's the trying and the hustle and the forcing that burns people out and exhausts them. And very often it's the leaders as well. In my coaching part of my business, I see people who want to talk to me about their careers because they're not progressing or they're not managing their time or their team effectively. But actually what it comes back to is personal well-being and boundaries and that ability to say no. And I'm a recovering people pleaser. That's another show. But like the ability to say no, to say, actually, how can I prioritize myself? Therefore, I'm showing up with clarity in my mind and responding to my own needs. Now I can show up with clarity and respond to the needs of my team. And if you show them that, then they'll do that too.
The conversation that we're having now, it's so important that business leaders recognize that making efforts around the well-being of all members of the company, whether you're a solopreneur or you're managing a team of hundreds, if you're not at least acknowledging that people's well-being can impact the bottom line in your business, you are running at a loss. And there's nothing angers me more than talking to a manager who says, "Oh yeah, Andrea is great. Sure, she started out here and she went on to amazing things." And the question I always come back to is, well, why couldn't she do amazing things with your company?
Mhm.
Why did she have to go elsewhere to do those amazing things? And I think, yes, sometimes that statement comes from pride, but it's ignoring that somebody had to leave in order to achieve. So, talk to me then about incorporating well-being into the workplace. Does it mean that as a manager, you need to all of a sudden find space for a gym or a meditation room, or how do you bring it into the workplace?
The thing about it is changing any type of mindset or habits as an individual or as an organization is hard. We recognize that. And the tick boxing exercise don't work. They just don't work. They'll work for a week, they'll work for 2 weeks, and then everybody's forgotten about it and moved on to the
Mhm.
next thing. So bringing it in really small pieces, doing a pulse survey, asking people like what their challenges are, what they actually need as part of their day. And something that comes back time and time again to me is that people are stuck to their desks. They're stuck to their laptops. And I am a big advocate of movement. Like, if you can move your body, you can move your mind. You can create great things. But if you're not moving your body, your mind's not being creative. If you're not moving your mind, your body's not going to really follow it either. So I talk about movement snacks. I talk about getting up from your desk for 5 minutes. No device. Get away from the screen. Get outside and walk. If you have to, have a team walking meeting or a brainstorm. Do some squats, do some sit-ups. And actually, I will be doing an online program to invite people at work to join. So you can take 5, 7 minutes a day and do something productive away from your desk. Walk, meditate, dance. Okay, if everybody's dancing in the office, that might be actually, it might be a new trend,
It could
you
be quite
know?
crack. It
It
could
could
be
be,
enjoyable. Yeah.
but the thing about it is to get moving.
Yeah.
Most people sit like this and their head is forward and their shoulders are forward, and then they get up and their back is sore and their hips are sore. But you haven't moved for 8 hours. So, and then you wonder why you want to go out for a big long run in the evening and then you injure your calf or your ankle. It's not because you were running badly, it's because you've been sitting on your bum for 10 hours.
It's because you've gone from 0 to 100 without actually
Yeah.
really warming yourself up properly. And I think, like, I'll never forget, like, during the pandemic, I have a dog. And I think I can hear your own dog in the background as we're having the chat as well. And I love my dog. She's an absolute nightmare at times, but she's my companion. During the pandemic, I realized I was spending so much time sitting at the computer that the dog was alerting me to her need to go to the bathroom. And that made me realize that I hadn't actually, I sat down after I brought you in the last time. That's probably about 3 hours ago now, and I haven't moved. It's very easy if you don't have something like a dog nagging at you to get off the desk. It is actually incredibly easy to sit for hours and then do some real harm to ourselves. And as a result, be less productive at work. I know myself, when I'm physically active, when I'm physically healthy, I'm far more productive. I get through far more stuff on a week when I'm incorporating movement than I would do on a week where I'm just stuck at the computer, even though that week to a manager, I would look more engaged as an employee rather than the employee who's constantly going outside for fresh air breaks because it actually helps me be more productive. That mindset piece from a managerial perspective is important, isn't it?
It is, it's huge. And the fact that managers will think that movement is distracting,
Mm,
but actually it's engaging. Because when you sit back down or you have to go into the next meeting, you are more focused, you're more alert, you're more switched on. Because we talk about the need for rest and recovery. What you're doing in those 5 minutes or 10 minutes that you take, you're resting and recovering your brain for the next thing. And also, it helps people regulate themselves. So if we're in a high demand, high performance workplace, or there's something going down that needs a lot of focus in a project, taking time to step away and breathe and regulate yourselves means that you're coming in to the next piece of your workday in responsive mode and not a reactive mode.
Do we then need to normalize movement breaks during the working day, just like smoking breaks have been normalized? Like, it as a non-smoker, I have to admit, and I'm very anti-smoking, it irritates me that in any workplace that colleagues who are smokers, that it's seen as normal. Of course, they're standing outside, having a cigarette, whereas it's seen as me taking time off if I were to stand outside and get some fresh air. And that, I think we need to talk about that more, that the benefits of actually getting some cold, fresh air on your face is wonderful. I used to do night shifts, and I remember, when I was a news anchor with News Talk and Today FM, and I'm not a nighttime person. I found them really hard to be like working at a computer at midnight. So to help, I used to go up to the very, very top floor of the building, get out into the balcony, stand in the freezing cold just to wake myself up and to reinvigorate myself. So I think a lot of the conversation we're having, it's about normalizing what we know to be scientific fact.
Absolutely. And this is what it's about. Like, this hasn't been pulled out of the air. This is science-based wellness. This is what we're after. And there's so much focus on, women's health at work, menopause, men's health too, mental health first aid. It's fantastic. But it's these little foundational pieces, getting outside, getting into daylight. It resets your circadian rhythm. It helps you sleep. Like, we know sleep is the foundation of everything. What you eat is important too. But if you're getting good sleep and you're eating well and you're not moving, you're not investing in your next week's self, your next month's self, your future self when you retire. How can you expect to be able to move in 10 years' time if you're not moving now? So fresh air, movement, and also for people who are neurodivergent, breaks are so important. And that is a focus that's in the workplace now as well. Like, I mean, at school, we have breaks between classes. At college, there's breaks between lectures. People get up and move. So it should be a normal part of culture at work and everywhere else.
So if you're listening to this and you want to start encouraging people to accept your need to go out and take these movement breaks, whether it's getting some fresh air or maybe doing some stretches at the desk, how do we open up that conversation?
I think it's really important to talk to your colleagues and share ideas. This is about being curious and sharing ideas and what other people are interested in. And then once you have that conversation and we have more than one person who's interested in doing this type of thing, getting moving, creating a new type of movement culture, talk to your boss, talk to the leaders, talk to HR. What can we do? If we don't tell people what we want, they can't read our minds. And if it's sort of a no, find out what other companies are doing it. Find out what other people are doing and show them up as an example and say, they're doing it, why not us?
I think as well, sometimes in the case of business and in the private sector versus the public sector, it's about actually doing that piece of research so you can put forward a business case for it. Because if you can prove that productivity will improve, workplace happiness will improve,
Absolutely.
employee retention will improve, then managers are more likely to buy into any initiative. What, Andrea, would you like listeners to take away as the key message from our conversation today?
I'd like people to know that they have a choice and that they have a right to autonomy and to exercise their voice. And staying quiet just because everyone else stays quiet about your wellness needs does not mean it's right. It's perfectly possible for a company to have profit and good performance and be decent humans too. So ask your leadership to do exactly that.
Well, Andrea O'Grady of The Wellness Edge, thank you so much for joining us on Cut Through the Noise. How can listeners find out more about you and The Wellness Edge?
So the best place to look is thewellnessedge.ie, and you'll also find me, Andrea O'Grady, on LinkedIn.
Andrea, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks a million, Ashling.
And that was my conversation with Andrea O'Grady of The Wellness Edge. I hope you found the conversation helpful to really get you thinking about how you are talking about wellness and well-being within your own team. You know, we all have issues outside of work that may impact our work, but we can't allow our work impact our health. And if it's okay, like I said earlier, for a team member to pop out for a cigarette break, then it needs to be okay for a team member to take 5 minutes to go and get some fresh air, or to do some stretches if they're suffering from back pain, or if they just find that it helps them become more productive. At the end of the day, a healthier workforce, a happier workforce will be more productive and will benefit the bottom line of every business. And like Andrea mentioned, many corporate giants in the world who are very successful have built-in well-being policies. And they're not just doing that because it sounds great, it's because it benefits their bottom line. So we really do need to start thinking about these things on a more long-term level, so that they're not one-off tokenistic measures. If you enjoyed the conversation, if you have any questions for me in relation to it, or if you want to give us some feedback, please do feel free to get in contact with us here at hello@thecommunicationscoach.ie. And yes, that email address is at the bottom of the show notes for this week's episode of the pod. And remember that if you want some advice in relation to your communications and marketing for your business, please do feel free to get in contact. I'd be happy to arrange a call with you. But I'm afraid that is all we have time for on this week's episode of Cut Through the Noise. So remember to incorporate well-being into your corporate policies and into your conversations with team members, so that they know that it is something that's important to you. And if you're an employee listening to this, well, it's time that you start thinking and talking about it with your colleagues and managers, so that everyone benefits at the end of the day. And remember that while content may well be king, clarity is key if you want to stand out from the crowd and cut through the noise.